Coming up on Network Africa. Sierra Leone government prepares for post-Ebola era after getting a clean bill of health from the World Health Organization.
We give thanks to Almighty God, and I stand here humbled by the dedication of the Ebola response workers, whose heroism is without parallel in the history of our country.
Burundi government cracks down on armed protesters as it conducts door-to-door search to confiscate legal weapons. And 14 presidential candidates to compete in Burkina Faso's presidential elections come November the 29th. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I am Adeshewa Josh. Before we take you through our lineup of stories today, here's a summary of stories that made headlines across Africa over the weekend. We start off in Sierra Leone, where the country has been declared Ebola-free by the World Health Organization on Saturday, November the 7th, when the West African nation had gone 42 days without any new cases. The world's worst recorded outbreak of the virus has infected more than 28,500 people and killed 11,300 in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone since it began in December 2013. And following 42 days with no new cases, the West African nation's epidemic was declared over on Saturday at a ceremony attended by President Ernest Bai Koroma and UN World Health Organization representative Anders Nostrom.
Today, Sierra Leone marks the end of the Ebola outbreak. We give thanks to Almighty God, and I stand here humbled by the dedication of the Ebola response workers, whose heroism is without parallel in the history of our country.
The country now enters a 90-day period of surveillance with support from the WHO, which says the monitoring phase was critical to ensure early detection of any possible new cases.
The Ebola outbreak has severely affected people, families, the health system, the economy and social structures. All need to recover and to heal. WHO is confident that the government of Sierra Leone, together with its national and international partners, will use this foundation now in place: dedicated and trained health workers, systems for alert and information management, community engagement and care for people, to deal now also with other key health priority problems, a drastic decline in child and maternal mortality topping that list. I thank you very much.
Meanwhile, there was jubilation in the capital Freetown, followed by a candlelit session to remember the victims of the epidemic. In Burundi, Security Minister Alain Buyoni announced on Sunday, November the 8th, that a forced weapons disarmament process had been launched in the country following months of violence and civil unrest. Burundi has seen at least 200 dead and tens of thousands have left the country since President Pierre Nkurunziza announced he would seek a third term in office, which he then won in a contested election in July. Buyoni added that the United Nations security forces were also in Burundi and would remain until peace is restored. The announcement comes a day after an attack on a bar in Bujumbura that witnesses say left a total of 9 people dead and wounded others. And as more facts emerge about the true cause of the Russian plane crash, Emirates Airlines President Tim Clark said on Sunday that the crash of the passenger jet in Egypt was a game changer for the aviation industry, and that would result in demands for stringent aviation security worldwide, including at Sharm el-Sheikh Airport in Egypt. Mr. Clark said security will be beefed up, but that the airline is not suspending any flights as a result of the disaster.
If it is as a result of what it is alleged to be, I'm afraid it's another game changer for the industry. There have been a series of incidents involving civil aircraft over the last couple of years. Relation 17 was one when it was shot down over Ukraine, and this is another one.
Investigators of the Russian plane crash in Egypt say they are 90% sure the noise heard in the final second of a cockpit recording was indeed an explosion caused by a bomb. Meanwhile, crowds gathered in a St. Petersburg cathedral on Sunday for a Russian Orthodox church service to mourn the victims of the plane crash in Egypt. Presidential campaign has kicked off in Burkina Faso ahead of an election meant to restore democratic rule and to choose a successor to longtime leader Blaise Compaoré, who was ousted in a popular uprising last year. 14 candidates are vying for the presidency in what is expected to be hotly contested on November the 29th. Among the front-runners, Roch-Marc Christian Compaoré, a former prime minister and parliament speaker who left Compaoré's party early last year, held his first rally in Bobo-Dioulasso, Burkina Faso's second largest city. Meanwhile, Benewende Stanislas Sankara, another front-runner who claims to be the political heir to former Burkina Faso leader and African folk hero Thomas Sankara, launched his campaign in the western town of Solenzo. Compaoré's attempt to change the constitution in order to extend his 27-year rule was met with mass protests that forced him to resign and flee the country, a poor cotton-producing state south of the Sahara Desert. Since then, the West African nation has been governed by a transitional administration. Let's take you on a short break on Network Africa. When we come back, one reportedly dead in Burundi government crackdown on armed protesters as security forces conduct house-to-house search.